Welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome, and welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness. I was planning on going into a description of guides and angels and what to look for and how to tell, how to work with your guides, and I might do a video on that specifically, but I thought, why not just ask the guides? Because when I go into a state of flow, which I can do just by now in this moment by having this conversation with whoever's tuning in. But I tend to filter it more when I'm trying to logically interpret, right, what's coming through. But I like to do that a little bit, in case you guys haven't noticed, because it helps me to share with you guys somehow in a more linear way, which sometimes we need, right? We need that linear definition of what is a guide? What do they look like? What are their names? Where do they come from? I'll just share this as an overall perspective. I hold a different perspective than a lot of other people about these things. And part of the reason is my guides have always said, who I refer to as my higher guidance team, that you're constantly growing and shifting and evolving. Why wouldn't they? So sometimes we have a tendency to hold on to a particular idea of what this, that, or the other thing does or comes from, and while that might be accurate to a certain extent, we don't know what we don't know, right? So it's good for us to be open and just to be in that heartfelt coherence. When we get into our heart space and we just drop in, our team that's there comes in to help us because we are our team. Oftentimes we think of guides as something outside of us, or we think of they have to have a name, or they have to. Sometimes guides don't have a name, or our definition of what a name isn't their definition. So it could just be a sound. It could be a tone, which is a sound. It could be a shape or a color. It can be this fluid looking, jellyfish. That just has a sound. And so how do we, sometimes I think we get caught up on thinking that the guides are going to look like us or sound like us or speak English. And so when we interpret that message, we're using our own filtration to interpret that message. So oftentimes our guides aren't necessarily the names that we've given them. They have other names, but those names come through, so we have something to call them in. I just call them my higher guidance team. And then I'll sometimes get a specific feeling with certain guides. And I'm sharing that with you guys too, because it's okay to tune into guides that way. It's not necessary from my perspective to know exactly the who, what, where, when, why, how, because even if we do know the who, what, when, where, why, how, it isn't necessarily 100% accurate. And I'm going to give it, for instance, we might know the recipe of a cookie and we might know the ingredients are chocolate chip, sugar, flour, but the origination of that flour could have been from, let's say it's sorghum wheat powder. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but that's the origination of that wheat plant that came from a collective or a germination of a wheat seed, right? I mean, there's just a different way of looking at it. So if we talk about Andromeda, it's connected to a lot more than just Andromeda. It isn't just Andromeda, right? Or if we think about Orion, well, Orion was a collective of all, it's kind of like when you watch, I'm going to give it, for instance, that's super easy to understand. When you watch like a Star Trek, right? And you see, that's a pretty good example of like the beings are coming from different places and different regions and different dimensions, but it's timeless. So oftentimes our guides are future versions of us that are actually angelic in frequency and angle and energy, or they could be a past version of us or an ancestor who we are related to through our DNA, genetically or through the bloodlines or beyond blood. I'm sharing this because the more we can just kind of open to the spaciousness and expansiveness of the energy and the fluidity, the less compartmentalization right? We need to give our guides because they're expansive too. And so my team has always been like, okay, you could just channel Andromedan, but why not channel a collective of frequencies that's part of Andromeda, right? So like the Andromedan Council, I've heard some people channel the Andromedan Council or the Arcturian Council. That's a collaboration and collective of energies that happen to represent that particular region, but they could be from many different places and spaces. And generally speaking, they are. So that was just something I wanted to share. Although it's fun, you guys, I always encourage people. One of the first things I learned, or one of my first awakenings, was listening to the Galactic Historian. So Andrew Bartz is back, I don't know, years ago. And I heard all of the things he was saying, and it was like ping, ping, ping. Lights started going off in my brain. I started getting emotional. Things started clearing because I had this connection to all of these beautiful beings from all of these different places and spaces. And again, it comes back to this now moment when I'm sharing. We have a connection to all those beautiful beings from all these different places and spaces. Although some of us might just have a connection to Earth, and that's okay too. But even if we just have a connection to Earth, we're still connected quantumly to all those beings, places, and spaces. There is no disconnect. So theoretically, we could be tuning into all of that. But from my perspective, our guidance team is maybe put together in this cookie or this recipe of ingredients that is, I've got these little bugs again, that is, I'm gonna spray a little hand sanitizer to keep it away. Actually, I think that might draw him closer because it's lavender scented. Yeah, so we're connected to all of these things. We're quantum, right? So if from my perspective, that recipe was put together to help us in this lifetime, right? And other lifetimes too, to experience and have certain experiences, to learn certain lessons, if we want to call it that, to have certain interactions. And their energy signature or pattern is associated with our signature energy pattern. And that allows us to then connect with those beings on an easier, in an easier way. Now, I know some people say, well, there's contracts and there's agreements and all of that. And I'm sure there are. But I'm just trying to invite everybody to be really open and let go of having to compartmentalize our guides. And then sometimes when we just open to that feeling of love, we might have an unexpected heart activation. And it might be that energy or that guide that came in to help us activate that only came in to help us activate that. And then they might be gone again. And so not being attached to those beings all of the time, just kind of allowing ourselves to be open as long as we stay centered and grounded. And I'm being called to talk briefly about that. There are some entities and beings who are not all love and light. From one perspective, they've opted to play the game, if we want to call it that, in a particular way that may not align with our desire to be in the highest and greatest good. And that takes practice sometimes in interpreting that and understanding that. And I would invite anybody who's not sure of that, you can ask, how do I feel around this? Is this energy here really for my highest and greatest good in alignment with the highest levels of love, light, and unity and oneness? And you'll get a no. Or when you're in that space, those energies, those frequencies won't attach. In essence, it's not, it's like two synapses firing. They just don't add up. I have a tendency to send those types of energies or beings gratitude, appreciation, recognition that that's part of this reality, rather than pushing it away in fear. Although I did that in the beginning, and it doesn't always work when you go into that place, because that drops your frequency, drops your vibration, and it puts you into a better system of conduit to link up with that energy. So being out of fear is really, really important. So those are just some messages I wanted to share about guides in general. So I'm going to tune in, just do a quick little informative play, maybe word play with the guides. So the question becomes, what are our guides and why are they here to guide us? What is it that we need guidance for and from, and where are we going? And when we really tap in and tune into this stream of consciousness that is all things, we begin to bilocate. And we'll play with this for a moment. For your idea of bilocation is not our idea of bilocation, for we are not a physical entity in this form, so to speak, as we are speaking through this form. Hopefully you guys follow that. So our idea of bilocation is tuning into multiple things all at once from one perspective, or tuning into different locations or ports of information that are available now from this particular place. For we, when we are sharing these messages, are tuned into a template in which our energy signature is held within. Yet this template is different from the human template structure, even though at one time it may have been within the human tempology structure. Yet some of us have never been part of that template at all. And we are merely remnants of energy that are coagulated, so to speak, in a harmony of frequency of light and information packets that bloom, so to speak, when we are connected to consciously. And so when we charge, or when we feel that charge of neurotransmitters, so to speak, connecting to us, we light up, we grin, we play, and we open to what it is that we have to share that may be of a greater knowledge chain and a bigger playground, as you might call it. And so a guidance system is just that. It is a lighthouse in the dark, so to speak, that leads the ship to where it needs to be moving towards, the direction that might help it stay on course. And yet the course that many of us have been led to believe is not always the course that is our best or highest evolving opportunity. And so let us speak on this a bit. For the guides have clarity, for we can see beyond the human form. So can you. And we are you from many different perspectives, all tuning into one perspective as a collective of energies and frequencies that are holding a way of communication that are collectively linked together, yet expansive beyond just one perspective. Yet we hold a vibrational match or frequency or understanding that allows us to communicate in this way. And this is, we can play with this in more detail later. So we are offering that light, if you wish to call it that, of energy, frequency, and messages through picture, sound, and all of your human ways of connection points of information. And this will expand or enhance your particular journey at times. And some of you are wondering, well, how come I don't hear my guides? Much like I'm hearing my guides now. And we would venture to say that not all of you chose to interpret your guides in this way. We would venture to say that some of you chose to come here with the least amount of exposure to guidance as possible because you wanted to have that experience of doing things the hard way. Uh-oh. But at other or I'm being guided to play with that a little bit. But then there are certain points where you are open to the guidance because you have chosen to change that type of interaction. And then we come through at those moments, the moments that you ask for our guidance. We can come through in all different ways. We can come through animals. An animal might choose to come towards you, to get you to think outside of your skin suit, to get you to think within your skin suit, to get you to tune into more than just your technology or just your common theme or common thread or one track mind. And so we play with that for a moment because we are connected to and through all things, just as you are, but we are not limited to a particular form, to a particular type of information. We have many different ways of helping you access more of you. And when we say that, we are referring to the past version of you, the future version of you, the version that is you now in this particular skin suit. And you have access to all of these variations of you. For each of those impressions in time came with learning experiences. And so you can tap into that to help you in this lifetime have different experiences, slightly different variations of those other experiences, and to help you close out old chapters and begin new ones, yet not feel lost or as if some information has been lost in the carryover or crossover. And this is difficult to convey because some people came here in this lifetime to have nothing like the old experience they had in another lifetime. Let's say perhaps at one time you were a warrior in a previous lifetime on Earth and you were a real, I'm hearing go-getter. In this lifetime, you came through and you decided to be a monk. And yet in this experience, you struggle being a monk because you carry with you your imprint of being a warrior. Yet potentially in this reality, you can be the best monk, the best go-getter that ever was by not going and getting. And therefore, you've created two completely opposite experiences, yet you still have within you the ability to feel more patient at times because of your past experience of needing to be impatient, meaning needing to lie in wait, needing to know and counter what your opponent was going to do. You can carry that with you in the version of the monk, in recognizing those pieces and parts of you that are looking to be aggressive or be assertive or dominate. And in that way, you could be a very specific type of monk. I don't know much about monks, I'm sorry, but allow you to have a very specific type of monk experience. Whereas another monk may never have been a warrior and they instead were a farmer. And that comes together in this lifetime as a monk, as an example, that can also be utilized in the collective of that particular vibration of that particular job. I don't know what the name for it is, path, we'll say. We're using these two examples because they are so far apart from each other. One might say, well, how could this be? And wouldn't that be difficult? And we would say it could be very difficult to be a warrior in one lifetime and a monk in another. And yet that is the path that you may have chosen, the difficult path. And because you knew it would be so difficult, you chose to come in this lifetime and put yourself in an environment in which all of those other distractions could not touch you other than maybe perhaps in your mind. And that would be your intention and purpose in this lifetime, would be to be the go-getter on not getting and being in a place of peace, stillness. And that would be the hardest part, is to still the mind based on those previous experiences. Now, this is not typically what a lot of people have done. Oftentimes, there is just a slight change or a slight variation. It might be that person chose to be a child that was going through, oh, I'm going into so many different places right now. So what I'm being called to share is our experiences are vast and many and infinite, and so are our guides. And so they're trying to paint a picture of how different each lifetime is, and that our guides have potentially also lived those types of lives. But on another scale, another harmonic, another resonance, they may never have lived in a physical body at all. But they can, let's say, gather information. I'm seeing dust particles, and they can show us how reality fluctuates or works. They can help us feel certain sensations in our body that are necessary at times to pull us out of distress or to bring us deeper into the shadow work by helping us to remember these shadowy aspects of ourselves that maybe we have denied, that has caused us previous or future, I'm hearing stress, but stress can be growth as well. Okay, so are we following this? I'm gonna have to do a couple different videos on this, I can tell. And so we are giving this as a basic understanding or role play, a picturing of roles that we all play in this reality and other realities, for we all have our own energy signature that we have chosen to inhabit, if you will. And so when you have a guidance team, as I call it, you are recognizing that there are more than just one, yet at the same time, there is no I in team, yet there is a me. So I'm being called to play with that. Like, there's more than one, but they're all coming together as one. Yet each guide can pull from different memories, but I'm being called that they're imprints in the field to help us tune into that particular feeling, memory, or information to help us have a different experience, an enhanced experience. And so while this could get complicated and there are many layers and levels to reality, and it can be helpful to understand those layers and levels and those template structures, we invite you to recognize that you are currently here now in this template structure, in this temple, and you are observing, not to play on words, observing the reality play out in front of you as you are creating this reality that is playing out in front of you. So as you observe the holidays, the rituals, the particular activities that are part of living this life, you are also observing and interacting with reality and these particular creations that you have established. And we would invite you to acknowledge that as you do this, you are always tuning into more. The question becomes, are you acknowledging that? And are you wishing to enhance that? So for those who do not acknowledge, that is their choice, or, and hearing whether it be subconscious, unconscious, or conscious choice, it is still a choice. And so those of you who wish to tune into these areas of reality in a different way, that is when you could say, help. I would like to have answers to this. And if this is something we are capable or we are in alignment with, helping you to understand more, I'm hearing ask and you shall receive. However, keep in mind that how we communicate may not be how you communicate. Therefore, we use all materials and beyond that we have at our disposal. So we are part of a fluidity, a fluid resonance, or the source of energy that moves through all things. And so we can utilize or call to you, just as you can call to you, more tools to help you understand how to navigate your ship, how to navigate through these waters that you perceive as dark. We are here to help you, so to speak, connect to your own inner light. For in reality, we are not outside of you. And in reality, the reality that you cannot necessarily perceive in this reality, we are you. And we are in love with you, so to speak, because we are part of that same frequency of love. Yet we would invite you to also tune into what that really means. For many people have this idea of love, and we would say that your idea of love is very different than our concept of love. And that'll be another video at another time. But in general, love is a frequency, and we could encode it with gratitude, bliss, joy, compassion. And it is not a high or a low. It is consistent. It is a consistency that holds the glue, if you will, of reality in your own spaciousness of together. A lot's coming through, so I'm just trying to I'm like kind of playing with that a little bit. So we would invite you to get beyond, if you can, the idea of love being a singular boy-girl, he-she interaction. We would invite you to recognize that our love comes through compassion, and it is part of who we are. Therefore, we are not obligated to help you. We are you. So we see you as a version of us. Therefore, we seek to help so that we can grow as well. As we grow together, we learn more from and through you. You learn more from and through us. And it is an exchange and an interaction that is constantly being expressed throughout life. Those are the ways in which we choose to interact with you. I'm seeing birds, plants, bees. All of a sudden you say something, you're like, where did that come from? Tuning into your higher self. Your higher self is your guide. But every once in a while, you know how we get good advice from a friend? Well, that friend may choose to help us on the other side because they've had the experiences that we could find useful for our own personal growth. Oh my goodness, this is so expansive. It's difficult to just wrap it into a linear. And that's kind of what my guides are trying to say is it's not linear. So don't worry about trying to figure it out and how this helps or how this really works. I'm hearing keep it simple. Just allow yourself to be open to continued guidance from the energies that are leading us into more expansiveness, more compassion, and more growth. So getting away from compartmentalizing how that has to look, how that has to sound, how it needs to show up for us is the key. And that's the message in this particular video. I'll go into more later. So in love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Namaste.